No one will berate beasts for lacking honor. They are doing what they must to survive. Few know this fact more than the famed Marauders, bounty hunters and mercenaries of fortune, their order predating all the way back to tribal times. They are harsh warriors who believe in might makes right, who care little for honor and laws, while some would call them barbaric looters and highwaymen and would want nothing to do with them. They would show how foolish they truly are, as Marauders are feared for a reason. They are masterful rangers and tamers of the wilds, hunters with no equal who never give up on a chase. They could be a nobleman's savior, protecting his shipments and cargo from wild beasts, or they could be his worst nightmare, as they are not above robbing a man for his arms or armor, or if he thinks he's been cheated. But as long as you stay useful to them, I'm sure you'll be fine. They are loners, preferring to stick to the wilds and spending little time with anyone other than the very beasts they tame. It's easy to spot them, as they adorn their helmets with horns and antlers of animals they kill, to show that they are members of the Order. These traditions date back to their ancient past, all the way back to the first Marauders, who were a tribal society known as the Svargjarl, or just the Svarg for short. As the legend goes, the first Marauder was a man named Throngard, who fled his homeland at a young age and served as a hired blade for most of his life. He was a famed warrior who had little equal. Over time, he amassed a small fortune, serving in many battles for many sides. When it was time for him to retire, he decided to head to his homeland, only to find that it was near destroyed. The various remaining clans were fighting to the death over petty squabbles for broken lands, and the feral dragons terrorizing them all from above. He had had enough, and rose to become a chieftain of his very own. He saw his homeland as the broken, scorched earth and sea of flame that it truly was. He knew its glory days were long gone, so he united as many clans and people as he could and fled to the once vibrant lands to start a new home in the southern Jarlantir Mountains. He spent the last of his days teaching his ways to the next generation, who carried those teachings with pride and would one day become the famous Marauders. They became nomadic over time, and started recruiting those from outside of the tribes. It didn't take long for what was once a tribal society of people to become an order of Dragoneers. Well, at least that's how the legend goes. Of course, they are far from united, splitting away into different factions and groups for various reasons. Most outsiders, myself included, don't even know the names of said factions, as it's wise to move along when you see two groups of Marauders in different coloured armours meeting, and they're not quite talk to people either, so it's hard to get any secrets out of them. It's not a common problem though. As previously mentioned, they are loners by nature, who prefer to stay in the wilds and hunt and tame wild beasts. Of course, they have a favourite to tame, and it's likely that if you've ever met a Marauder, you've seen them with one. I refer of course to the Bloodchaser Dragon, mostly from Svard tradition, but also because they are one of the most widespread and feared dragon species, almost as much as the Marauders themselves. Few outside of the Order have even learned how to tame such beasts, making their pride of them well deserved. It's quite common to see Marauders fighting as mercenaries during times of war, and in this Age of Ashes, they are some of the best warriors of the land. But any ruler must keep in mind, the Marauder sides with their best interests first and foremost. And if the coin stops flowing, they might just up and leave, or worse, swap to the side that has the coin. I remember when I was a young lad, and I had left home to adventure around the continent for the first time. I was lost in the Caribbean jungle. Foolishly, I was travelling down the Sark estuary in a rowboat as I was unaware that it was home to a particularly nasty clade of night snaggers. One swooped down and breathed fire before me, capsizing my boat. At that point, I thought it would be the end of me, were it not for the sound of steel and slashing I heard from under the water. As my head poked out, I saw Marauder in green armour, slaying the very beast that attacked me. After he won, he looked down at me for a moment. I was drowning in the river, and even though all I could see of him through the armour was his eyes, I knew he was judging me, to see if I was worthy of life, or just more dead weight. It was the first time I ever met a Marauder, and I was a little intimidated, truth be told. In the end, he pulled me out and saved my life, only to walk away without saying a word. I thanked him anyway. It wasn't until the next day that I realised he was probably following me for a while, and in fact he was just using me as bait, which probably explains why he saved me in the end. After all, true hunters let their prey come to them. As an older man, I've known that you want marauders on your side. I've seen the look of determination on their faces. Their reputation for never giving up on a hunt is true. Even if the battle is lost and defeat is assured, the marauder will focus on their kill regardless of any orders they are given. Of course, they are not wild beasts themselves who cannot listen to reason, though they might want you to think otherwise, for reputation in and of itself is a weapon. I've seen a small rebellion of tribal peoples surrender to the Skeld immediately, purely because they had hired a group of marauders. Unsurprisingly, their traditions are quite unknown to outsiders, but I know of one. At some point in a marauder's later life, they are to take an apprentice of sorts, to act as a squire that they would teach and train, in what I hear can be rather harsh ways, such as sending them out into the snowy Neodor range with little more than a sword and armour before them, and are told to make their way back to their mentor. The test, of course, is a trick, to teach them that touching cold steel with your bare hands is a bad idea. Though, to be fair, it does teach them to know all they can about their own equipment, although I doubt all of them make it back from such harsh treatment, and I assume if the student is a failure, and doesn't return to their mentor, they would have to get another. It's unlikely to me that a marauder would only take one apprentice in their life, as their numbers are growing, if only steadily, and I doubt they would be so widespread if they were so rigid with their numbers and recruitment. This may seem too harsh or cruel, but you must keep in mind that marauders are meant to deal with the most wild and savage beasts, and the only way to know how to deal with a cornered beast is to be cornered yourself, to be put in the horrible life or death situation that these monsters face every day. Only when you're in their headspace can you think like them. At least, that's how they see it. Despite being nomadic explorers and adventurers, the different factions of marauders do have bases and castles that they own. I've never been in one, but I assume they hold all sorts of meetings where they discuss whatever marauders get up to. Or perhaps they just have banquets and feasts. After all, I have shared a drink with a few marauders in my time, and I've seen a few in the corner of taverns. And what's best after a good hunt than a good drink? Now, I'm not suggesting that they're party animals by any means, but as they give into the more animalistic nature on the battlefield, they might do so too when relaxing or just having fun as well. But as far as my knowledge, they are solitary people, so perhaps this is a bit of a stretch. I often wonder about marauder traditions. As a group of hunters and tamers, I'm sure they have a tradition around their most treasured pets, the blood chasers. I do hope the young initiates are just given eggs to raise from scratch, but come to think of it, I'm sure a young blood chaser would still be a bit of a handful. Perhaps they must hunt a mother and take her eggs to raise themselves. That seems more like their style. I think I should ask a marauder about this next time I meet one. Then again, perhaps not. It is best to stay on the good side of a marauder, and that might have bad memories attached. I'm sure I could naturally bring it up in a conversation, perhaps when I'm trading with one next, or in an inn with one as a fellow patron. You know, I've actually fought a marauder once before. Funnily enough, I think she just wanted my saddle, and thought I would have just handed it over if she intimidated me enough. And in truth, our hungry dragon was a startle. But with a dragon of my own behind me at the time, I was confident enough to fight her. I won in the end and got her to fly away on her mount, although she did give me a massive scar on my chin. It still itches to this day, actually. I also know of a similar story, one of a Windguard captain who wasn't as lucky as I, as a marauder stabbed him in his sleep purely to take his dragon's saddle. But if you ask me, I think something more was going on there, as attacking a Windguard just for their armor would be very foolish, even for a marauder. But I guess he got away with it, as no one will say who he is. It's interesting to see interactions people have with marauders, as their reputation really does precede them, and unlike phantoms, people actually see them on a common basis. I've seen more than a few innkeeps give out free drinks to a group of marauders, as thanks for slaying a local beast. I've also seen some poorer folk run and beg to marauders for help. They're rarely helped when they try that way. They don't work for free, they work for coin, as they need to survive like the beasts they hunt. Some view Marauders as merciless for this reason, and I can understand why they say that. But I don't think that's the case. They are survivalists and realists, who care about what's practical and necessary. And it's a mindset that's led them to become some of the strongest warriors of this land. Things aren't so black and white, especially in nature, so it's understandable that nature's champions are also morally absent in many ways. But I hope my tales and ramblings have taught you what I feel about the Marauders, and I hope you have learned something new from our little chat. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.